Are you struggling while solo queuing to gain any RP or any sort of consistency? Well, let's go over some tips to start gaining more RP while solo queuing. Let's begin with what legends should you be playing. First of all, you should be playing movement legends. If you're playing support legends, it's possible, but most of the time you have to be carrying a lot of the fights. And if you're not a legend that allows you to, push hard a weak opponent to be, a man up in that fight, or be on a legend that can get you out of a bad situation without getting knocked, or, push back after dealing a lot of entry damage or getting that initial knock, you're going to be in a rough spot sometimes. When solo queuing, you have to assume your teammates aren't going to do much. So if you aren't going to be willing to take command in fights, you will find yourself struggling a lot. So running legends like Pathfinder, Wraith, Octane, Ashe are going to be key and the best picks for solo queuing really on any map in any season. Moving on to the next thing, which is going to be closely related to this, is that of being the default leader or IGL of your team, regardless of whether your teammates have mics or not. Why do I say this? It's because you have to be able to communicate with them, whether with mic, whether with pings, whether you're just praying your randoms listen to you in any way. You have to get good at practicing being the leader, making the calls, getting the rotations, setting the pace of the game for your team, as well as the play style. Hopefully your teammates aren't in party chat and they have mics, or at the very least are willing to listen. As long as they're willing to listen and you have a game plan, a lot of times randoms will follow your lead. And if they don't, then sadly, pinging or just doing what you can, staying close to them is all you can do. But along with this science, if they're not listening to you or they made a bad push, putting you in a bad spot, while solo queuing, be selfish is how you need to be. That may sound counterintuitive to a team-based game, but while solo queuing, your randoms sometimes are literally your worst enemies. So if your teammates are blatantly pushing a dumb fight, don't die in a dumb 1v3 that you're just going to lose. You're just throwing RP away. And I know it can be annoying at times, but sometimes riding while solo queuing is the only way to go. So practice being the IGL, make as many calls as you can, ping as much as you can, try and be confident, have a good game plan. Hopefully your teammates listen, and if they don't, just do your best to stick close to them, and if you need to, rat. The next thing we need to discuss is being the jump master / not landing contested. So one thing that I always tell everyone that wants to solo queue, and it's something that happens almost every single game that you need to just cherish if you get it, and that's never pass up being the jump master. Dropping correctly is so important when playing with randoms. You have to always put yourself in the best spot possible off the drop, because a lot of your teammates will put you in very bad spots. You guys are already at a terrible disadvantage of having no team chemistry, sometimes no communication, and so you need to do the best that you can to at least land safely so you guys can loot something. If you guys get contested all the time, you're more likely than not never going to win it, because any other team that's a 3-stack is probably going to beat you guys. So you have to pay attention to every team in your area, where they're landing. All this is very valuable information for knowing how populated your side of the map is going to be, how contested is your POI, or where you can, rotate once you land and take loot. Is there an easy third party nearby? Is there a team that you can, 3v3 early? High level players are always going to take all this into account when dropping, and not just drop straight to wherever you decide. You have to take in a lot of information, and it's always better, obviously, to trust yourself than to trust your, random players that may not even talk to you. So you should always strive to try and land alone, because, it's at least going to allow you and your randoms to get some type of weapons, and 50-50ing a bin for a gun is something that you don't really want to do, just because you don't want to leave Apex all that, RNG. So you have to also be the lead on your team in fights and outputting damage. I mentioned this earlier, and you may say, I'm trying really hard and I just can't solo queue at this given rank, no matter what. And the reality of it is that maybe you just aren't skilled enough to solo queue this given rank and carry fights in this rank. What should you do? How do I recommend you get better? Well, obviously play a lot of Apex for yourself. Also, watch ALGS, watch your favorite pro streamer, your high-level content creator. Do what they do. Try and understand why they do things, and then, you know, start paying attention to those little things and trying to implement that into your gameplay every time. Trying to always like take away something from their high level gameplay or their really good matches, stuff like that. Implement it, and then you practice as well, and you'll see that you'll just start getting better and better and better. And then maybe that, you know, solo queue fight that you couldn't carry, you now can get that initial knock every time. You know, the little things. And you know, let's just talk about a common playstyle for most solo queue players, for most maps, most anything. What you always want to do is you want to try and get a very easy third early, or you want to take a, you know, straight up 3v3 where you yourself can carry the fight. You want it the most to only fight twice as a solo queuer. You want to fight once to get 2 KP at the most, you know, from a straight 3v3 or third partying something easy, and then you really just want to play it slow. And this is going to be very difficult because you have to corral your, you know, randoms that may want to push whatever gunshots they hear on the other side of the map, you know. But a lot of times at this point, if you can, this is where you corral your teammates. You tell them, hey, I think, you know, we all have 2 KP. It may not sound like a lot to some of you that like to get max KP, but 2 KP as a solo queue player is pretty solid. And at this point, you just play it slow and you play for the end game. You try and at least predict, and this is where the IGL skills come into play, where you try and predict the best spot in zone. You try and, you know, get a really good spot, and then you just hold it, bunker down, get to the end game. What you always want to do is you want to maximize that KP, and you want to minimize, you know, the thought or the times that you lose a lot of RP from dying early. You want to always try and get whatever KP you can and survive as long as possible, and then play for the end game. If you're consistently putting yourself as a solo queue player in the end game, you're going to always be losing very small amounts of RP, and then you're going to have that one game where you do get 5-6 KP and win the game, you know. And then, you know, the bad games are really tiny, and the good games, they start adding up, even if it does take time and is kind of slow. But if you guys want to gain more consistent RP on World's Edge, whether solo queuing or on a team, check out this ranked guide right here to start gaining massive RP this season of Ranked.